The brass bell above Romano's trattoria chimed at exactly 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes before closing. Most servers would have groaned, but Marcus Chen just smiled that quiet smile of his, the one that never quite reached his eyes, and grabbed a menu from the hostess stand. "Welcome to Romano's," he said, his voice carrying that practiced warmth that came from 6 years of perfecting the craft. "Just you gentlemen tonight." Four men stood in the doorway, and something about them immediately set off alarm bells in the part of Marcus's brain he'd spent the last decade trying to silence. They were too coordinated, too aware. The way they moved into the restaurant wasn't the casual stroll of late-night diners. It was a tactical spread, each taking a position that maximized visual coverage of the dining room. But Marcus kept smiling, because Marcus Chen was a waiter, a single father to 7-year-old Emma, a man who'd left his past buried under a different name in a different life, and waiters didn't profile customers. Waiters seated them at nice tables and asked about appetizers. "Yeah," the lead guy said. He was tall, angular, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow that looked like it had stories to tell. "Table for 4. Somewhere with a view of the main room." "Of course," Marcus replied, leading them to booth 7, the curved leather bench that wrapped around a corner table, giving a panoramic view of the entire restaurant. As he walked, he counted. 12 other customers scattered across 6 tables. Valentina was handling the bar. Giuseppe was in the kitchen with his prep cook Carlos, and in booth 1, the power booth as they called it, sat Alexander Whitmore III. Everyone knew Whitmore. You couldn't live in Manhattan and not know the face that graced the cover of Forbes twice in the past year. 38 years old, CEO of Whitmore Technologies, the man who'd revolutionized cybersecurity and made himself a billionaire before his 40th birthday. He came to Romano's every Thursday night, always alone, always ordered the osso buco, always tipped exactly 22%. Marcus had served him dozens of times. They had an understanding. Whitmore liked his privacy, Marcus provided it. No small talk beyond the necessary, no hovering, just excellent service and silence. "Can I start you gentlemen with drinks?" Marcus asked, placing menus in front of the 4 men. "Water," Scarface said. The other 3 echoed him. "No alcohol," another red flag. People who came to restaurants this late usually wanted wine, wanted to unwind. These men were working. Marcus nodded and headed to the beverage station, his mind already racing through possibilities he didn't want to consider. Maybe they were just businessmen. Maybe they were cops on a late shift. Maybe he was paranoid, seeing shadows from a life he'd left behind in the alleyways of Hong Kong and the training compounds of Langley. He poured 4 waters, his hands steady even as his pulse quickened. Through the kitchen window, he could see Emma's artwork taped to the wall beside the time clock, a crayon drawing of the 2 of them holding hands under a rainbow. She'd made it in art class last week, written "My Hero Daddy" in purple letters across the top. Marcus carried the waters back to booth 7, distributed them with practiced efficiency. "Have you gentlemen had a chance to look at the menu?" "We're not eating," Scarface said, his eyes never leaving Alexander Whitmore in booth 1. "Just waiting for someone." The air in Marcus's lungs suddenly felt too thick. "Of course, take your time." He moved away, circling through his other tables, checking on the couple finishing tiramisu at table 3, refilling wine for the business associates at table 8. But his attention never left booth 7 and booth 1. At 11:53 it happened. Scarface stood up. Then his 3 companions. They moved with synchronized precision, splitting formation, 2 heading toward the front door, 1 toward the back exit that led to the kitchen, and Scarface walking directly toward Alexander Whitmore. Marcus was already moving before his conscious mind fully processed the threat. His body remembered what his life had tried to forget: 7 years in Marine Corps Force reconnaissance. Another 4 with a 3-letter agency that officially didn't exist, operations in 14 countries under 11 different names. He'd killed 23 men, saved hundreds more, and walked away from it all when Emma was born. When her mother, dying in that hospital bed from complications nobody saw coming, had gripped his hand and made him promise. "Give her a normal life. Be the father I know you can be." But normal life didn't prepare you for what to do when 4 professional operators were clearly about to kidnap or assassinate a billionaire in your restaurant. Marcus grabbed the coffee pot from the service station, still half full, still scalding hot, and angled toward booth 7 just as Scarface reached Whitmore's table. "Mr. Whitmore," Scarface said, his hand moving inside his jacket. "We need you to come with us quietly." Whitmore looked up, confusion flickering across his features. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" "You don't need to know us, you just need to stand up and walk toward the door." Do it now and nobody in this restaurant gets hurt. The couple at table 3 looked over. The business associates at table 8 were starting to notice. Valentina, behind the bar, had frozen mid-pour. Marcus reached booth 7 just as Scarface's hand emerged from his jacket with a compact pistol. Small caliber, probably a 380, perfect for close quarters intimidation. "Excuse me, sir," Marcus said, his voice still carrying that customer service warmth. "Would you like more coffee?" Scarface turned, irritation flashing across his face. "Get lost, waiter," Marcus smiled, and threw the entire pot of coffee directly into Scarface's face. The man's scream shattered the quiet ambience of Romano's trattoria like a sledgehammer through stained glass. His hands flew to his face, the pistol clattering to the floor. Marcus was already moving, his body flowing through combat sequences that muscle memory had maintained even through 6 years of carrying trays instead of rifles. He swept Scarface's legs, dropping him hard onto the tile floor, then pivoted toward the operative moving in from the front door. The man was reaching for his own weapon, but Marcus was faster, grabbed a wine bottle from table 6, swung it in a tight arc that connected with the man's temple. Not hard enough to kill, but sufficient to send him stumbling backward into a table, knocking over glasses and sending silverware clattering. "Everybody down," Marcus shouted, his voice changing, no longer the gentle waiter but the command presence of someone who directed fire teams in Fallujah. "Get down now," the couple at table 3 dropped. The business associates dove under their table. Whitmore, to his credit, slid down in his booth, eyes wide but aware enough to follow instructions. The third operative, the one who'd been covering the back exit, was sprinting toward Marcus now. Big guy, probably 6'3", 220, moving with the confidence of someone who'd relied on size his whole career. Marcus waited, weight on his back foot, hands relaxed at his sides. The big man swung, a haymaker telegraphed from his shoulder. Marcus slipped inside the arc, drove his elbow up into the man's solar plexus, then followed with a palm strike to the nose. Cartilage crunched, blood sprayed. The big man staggered back and Marcus swept his leg again, sending him crashing into the hostess stand. 3 down, 1 still standing. The fourth operative had reached the front door and was pulling it open, clearly deciding this operation had gone sideways enough to warrant retreat. But Marcus couldn't let him leave. Couldn't let any of them disappear into the city to regroup, to come back, to maybe target Emma's school or the apartment where she slept with her stuffed elephant and her nightlight shaped like a crescent moon. Marcus sprinted toward the door, his server's shoes, non-slip rubber soles, comfortable for 12-hour shifts, finding traction on the tile. He caught the fourth man just as he cleared the threshold, grabbed his collar, and yanked him backward with enough force to lift him off his feet. They tumbled together onto Romano's entrance mat, the one that said "Welcome" in Italian script. The operative twisted, trying to create space, and Marcus saw the knife, a tactical folder, opening with a practiced flick. The blade came up fast, aimed at Marcus's throat. Training took over. Marcus caught the knife hand at the wrist, twisted counterclockwise while driving his knee into the man's elbow joint. The angle was wrong for the joint. It bent backward with a sound like green wood snapping. The operative screamed. The knife fell. Marcus swept it away, then drove his fist once, twice, 3 times into pressure points along the man's jaw and neck. The operative went limp. Silence descended on Romano's trattoria. The kind of silence that comes after thunder when the air itself seems to be holding its breath. Marcus stood slowly, his waiter's uniform, black pants, white shirt, black vest with the Romano's logo embroidered over the heart, somehow still mostly intact except for a tear at the shoulder. His breathing was elevated but controlled. His hands weren't shaking. "Is everyone okay?" he called out, his voice returning to that gentle register even though adrenaline was still singing through his veins. "Anyone hurt?" Murmurs of "we're okay," and "what the hell just happened" rippled through the restaurant. Giuseppe emerged from the kitchen, chef's knife in hand, his eyes wide. Valentina was already on the phone with 911. And Alexander Whitmore was standing now, staring at Marcus with an expression that combined shock, gratitude, and intense curiosity. "You," Whitmore said, "you're not just a waiter." Marcus met his eyes. "Tonight I was just a waiter protecting his customers." "Bullshit." Whitmore stepped over Scarface, who was still moaning on the floor, hands covering his scalded face. "I've seen combat. I did 2 years with the army in Afghanistan before my tech career. Nobody moves like that without serious training. Who are you?" Before Marcus could answer, sirens began wailing in the distance, growing louder. The first police car would arrive in 90 seconds, Marcus estimated. Then the questions would start, questions he'd spent 6 years avoiding. My name is Marcus Chen, he said carefully. I've worked at Romano's for 6 years. I have a daughter named Emma who's in second grade at PS 234. That's everything that matters. That's not everything, Whitmore insisted, crossing the space between them. Those men came for me, professional operators. And you took down all 4 of them like it was nothing. I need to know who you are because I need to know if I can trust you. Marcus glanced at the 4 men on the floor, all conscious but incapacitated, none of them going anywhere. Then at the frightened faces of the other customers. Then at Emma's rainbow drawing visible through the kitchen window. You can trust me, Marcus said quietly, because I gave up everything I was to become who I am now. I'm a father. That's my only mission these days. The police burst through the door then, 3 officers, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Marcus raised his hands slowly, non-threateningly, and let them take control of the situation. He answered their initial questions with calm precision. Yes, he was an employee. Yes, he'd witnessed the attempted kidnapping. Yes, he'd intervened to protect the customers. No, he wasn't injured. They separated everyone, witnesses to different corners, the 4 assailants into custody. An ambulance arrived for Scarface's burns and the big man's broken nose. Detectives showed up at 12:47 a.m., notepads out, recording devices activated. And through it all, Alexander Whitmore watched Marcus with the intensity of a man solving a puzzle. It wasn't until 2:15 a.m., after the last detective had taken the last statement, and the crime scene techs had photographed the last blood spatter, that Marcus finally found himself alone with Whitmore outside Romano's. The street was quiet, the city's usual cacophony muted to a distant hum. Thank you, Whitmore said. Those men would have killed me or worse. You saved my life. Marcus shrugged, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind the familiar ache in his lower back. A souvenir from Kabul and the bone-deep weariness that came from violence, even necessary violence. I did what anyone would have done. No, Whitmore said firmly. You did what maybe a dozen people in this city could have done, and I want to know why a man with your skills is serving osso buco for minimum wage plus tips. It's a good job, Marcus said. I get to see Emma every morning before school and every night for dinner. Giuseppe is flexible when she's sick. The work is honest. You're wasting yourself. Something in Marcus's chest tightened. I'm not wasting anything. I'm building a life. Whitmore studied him for a long moment. How much did those men know? Did they know about Emma? The question landed like a fist to Marcus's gut. He'd been trying not to think about it, about whether this was random, whether Whitmore was the only target, whether Marcus's intervention had just painted a target on his daughter's back. I don't know, Marcus admitted. Then we need to find out. Whitmore pulled out his phone, not an iPhone, Marcus noticed, but something custom, probably encrypted beyond anything the consumer market offered. I'm calling my head of security. We're going to your daughter, wherever she is, and we're making sure she's safe. Non-negotiable. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to insist he could handle his own family's security. But the truth was he'd been out of the game for 6 years. His contacts had gone cold. His clearances had expired. If someone was coming for Emma, he needed help. She's with my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, Marcus said. Apartment 4C, building on 23rd Street. Let's go. They took Whitmore's car, a black Mercedes S-Class with bulletproof glass and a driver who looked like he moonlighted as a linebacker. Marcus sat in the back, his phone pressed to his ear, listening to the ringing. Once, twice, 3 times. Hello, Mrs. Rodriguez's voice groggy but alert. Marta, it's Marcus. Is Emma still asleep? Of course, Mijo. She went down at 8:30, hasn't made a peep. Why, what's wrong? Nothing, Marcus lied, hating himself for it. Just had a late night at work. I'm on my way home now. Can you stay with her for another 20 minutes? Always, you know that. The Mercedes navigated Manhattan streets with practiced ease, arriving at Marcus's building in 14 minutes. They rode the elevator to the 4th floor in silence, Whitmore's security chief, a woman named Carter with the shoulders of a swimmer and the eyes of a hawk, leading the way. Marcus unlocked his apartment door as quietly as possible. The living room was dark except for the nightlight glow coming from Emma's room. Mrs. Rodriguez was on the couch reading a paperback. Everything okay? She whispered, standing up. Everything's fine, Marcus assured her. Thank you, Marta. I'll see you in the morning. After Mrs. Rodriguez left, Carter did a sweep of the apartment, checking windows, closets, the fire escape. Marcus went to Emma's room and stood in the doorway, watching his daughter sleep. She was curled around her stuffed elephant, her hair dark like her mother's spread across the pillow. She looked peaceful, safe, innocent. She's beautiful, Whitmore said softly, appearing beside Marcus. How old? 7, second grade. Loves math and hates broccoli, wants to be an astronaut. My daughter wanted to be an astronaut too, Whitmore said. She's 19 now, studying aerospace engineering at MIT. Probably will be an astronaut knowing her. Marcus turned to look at him. You have a daughter, 2 daughters actually, and a son, all grown, all brilliant, all the result of a marriage that ended 5 years ago. Whitmore's voice carried the weight of old pain. Being a billionaire CEO doesn't leave much time for soccer games and school plays. I learned that too late. They moved back to the living room, where Carter was setting up some kind of scanning device near the windows. All clear, she reported. No surveillance, no bugs, no signs of tampering. Whoever those men were, they weren't tracking the waiter. They were tracking me, Whitmore said. The question is why, and who sent them? He settled onto Marcus's second-hand couch, looking oddly at home despite the vast gulf between his world and this rent-controlled apartment with its IKEA furniture and Emma's crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator. Tell me about the men, Whitmore continued. What did you notice? Marcus sat across from him, his mind already compiling the tactical assessment he'd begun the moment those 4 walked through Romano's door. Eastern European, probably. The lead guy, the one with the scar, had a Chechen accent, subtle but there. Military bearing, all of them. Professional operators, but not top tier. Top tier wouldn't have split formation the way they did, wouldn't have let a waiter get the drop on them. You're not just a waiter, Whitmore said again. I was a Marine, Marcus admitted. Force Recon, did 7 years, 3 tour. After that, he paused, measuring how much to reveal. After that, I did contract work, private security mostly. It wasn't entirely a lie, just an incomplete truth. And you gave it up to serve pasta? Whitmore's tone wasn't mocking, it was genuinely curious. I gave it up to be Emma's father. Her mother died when Emma was 6 months old. Pregnancy complications nobody caught until it was too late. She made me promise, Marcus's voice caught, the grief still sharp even after 7 years. She made me promise to give Emma a normal life. Not the life I'd been living, not the danger and the secrets and the coming home at 3 a.m. covered in someone else's blood. Whitmore nodded slowly. But that life found you anyway. Tonight was about protecting customers in my restaurant. Tomorrow I go back to being Marcus Chen, single dad and waiter. Except you can't, Carter interjected, looking up from her scanning device. Mr. Whitmore, we need to assume those men were advance elements. Someone wants you badly enough to send a 4-man team into a public restaurant. When that team doesn't report back, they'll send another. I know, Whitmore said, which is why I'm going to hire Marcus as my personal security consultant. Marcus started to object, but Whitmore held up a hand. Hear me out. I need someone I can trust, someone who's already proven they're willing to put themselves between me and danger. Someone who isn't part of my existing security apparatus because for all I know, that's been compromised. I'm not looking for work, Marcus said. I have a job. Giuseppe will understand. I'll compensate him for the loss of his best waiter. Whitmore leaned forward. Marcus, listen to me. I've spent the last 6 months receiving death threats. My company is on the verge of releasing new encryption technology that would make it impossible for governments, including our own, to conduct digital surveillance. There are billions of dollars at stake, and more importantly, there's power at stake. Someone wants me dead or controlled, and they're clearly willing to kill innocent bystanders to make it happen. Then you need the FBI. The Secret Service, someone with resources. I have those people. What I need is someone who gives a damn, someone who has something to lose, someone who understands what it means to protect what matters most. Whitmore's gaze shifted toward Emma's room. I'll pay you $200,000 for 2 weeks of work. Help me figure out who's trying to kill me and neutralize the threat. Then you can go back to your life. $200,000. Marcus's entire annual salary at Romano's was $32,000 before tips. $200,000 would cover Emma's college fund, would move them out of this apartment into a place with better schools, would give her opportunities he'd only dreamed of providing. And Emma, Marcus asked, where does she go while I'm protecting you? Carter will arrange security for her. 24-hour surveillance, armed guards disguised as teachers and staff at her school, hardened security on this apartment. If someone comes after her to get to you, they'll find themselves up against the same level of protection I use for my own children. Marcus looked at Carter, who nodded confirmation. We'll keep her safe, she said. You have my word. It was a terrible idea. Every instinct Marcus had cultivated over 6 years of peaceful living screamed at him to refuse, to stick with the safe, predictable routine of serving tables and reading bedtime stories. But those instincts were the instincts of Marcus Chen, waiter and single father. The man he'd been before, the one who'd survived Fallujah and Kabul and a dozen nameless cities where his missions never officially happened, that man knew the truth. Violence had found him, and if he didn't face it head-on, it would find Emma too. "I need to be here every night when Emma goes to bed," Marcus said, "and every morning when she wakes up. Non-negotiable." "Agreed. And if at any point I think she's in danger because of this arrangement, I walk away, no matter what's happening with your situation." "Agreed." Marcus looked at Carter, then back at Whitmore. 48 hours. Give me 48 hours to figure out who sent those men and why. If I can't crack it by then, you go to the FBI and I go back to Romano's." 72 hours, Whitmore countered. "You'll need time to investigate properly." "Fine, 72 hours." Marcus stood, extending his hand. "But Mr. Whitmore, you need to understand something. The man who took down those 4 operators tonight, that's not who I am anymore. I don't like being him. I'm doing this for Emma's future, not because I miss the work." Whitmore shook his hand, his grip firm. "Understood. For what it's worth, I don't think people stop being who they are. We just choose which parts of ourselves to show the world." After Whitmore and Carter left, Carter staying in a car outside the building for the rest of the night, Marcus went to Emma's room again. She'd shifted in her sleep, now sprawled across the bed in that boneless way children slept. He adjusted her blanket, kissed her forehead, and whispered the same thing he whispered every night. "I love you, baby girl. More than anything in this world." Then he went to his own bedroom and opened the closet. On the top shelf, hidden behind old shoeboxes and winter clothes, was a lockbox. Marcus hadn't opened it in 6 years. He punched in the code, Emma's birthday, and the lid clicked open. Inside was everything he'd left behind. His Marine Corps discharge papers honorable with commendations. A passport under his real name, not Marcus Chen, but Marcus Kane, the name he'd used before witness protection relocated him after that disaster in Hong Kong. A phone number written on a card for a man named Sullivan who'd been his handler at the agency. And a photograph of a woman with dark hair and fierce eyes, Emma's mother, Rebecca, taken 3 days before she died. Marcus picked up the photograph, his thumb tracing the edge. "I'm sorry," he whispered to her image. "I tried to keep my promise, but I need to keep her safe. You understand that, right?" The photograph, of course, said nothing. But Marcus imagined he could hear Rebecca's voice, the way she'd sounded in those final hours. "Do what you have to do. Just come back to her." He put the photograph back, closed the lockbox, and began planning his next 72 hours. The first move was obvious: identify the 4 men from Romano's. The police would have their fingerprints, their DNA, but that information would be locked behind bureaucratic red tape and legal procedures. Marcus needed answers faster than the justice system moved. At 6:30 a.m., after Emma had woken up and they'd shared breakfast, pancakes, her favorite, with chocolate chips arranged into smiley faces, Marcus walked her to school. Carter's team was already in place, he noticed. A utility worker checking power lines across the street. A parent sitting in a car, reading a newspaper but watching the school entrance. A crossing guard who moved with military precision. Emma blessedly noticed none of it. "Did you have a good night at work, Daddy?" she asked, her small hand in his. "Interesting night," Marcus said. "But I got to help someone, which felt good." "Like a superhero," Marcus smiled, "just like a regular person doing the right thing." At the school gates, he hugged her tight. "I love you. Be good for Mrs. Patterson." "Love you too, Daddy." He watched until she disappeared into the building, then turned to find Carter waiting by a black SUV. "Ready?" she asked. "Let's go see what Alexander Whitmore's world looks like from the inside." Whitmore Technologies occupied floors 43 through 56 of a midtown high-rise. The security was impressive. Biometric scanners, man-trap entrances, armed guards who looked like they could moonlight as UFC fighters. Carter led Marcus through the maze, eventually arriving at a top-floor conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Whitmore was already there, along with 2 other people. One was a woman in her 60s, silver hair cut in a sharp bob, wearing a power suit that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. The other was a young man, maybe 25, with the disheveled appearance of someone who'd been working all night. "Marcus Chen," Whitmore said. "Meet Sarah Hendricks, my chief legal counsel, and David Park, head of my cybersecurity division." "Sarah, David, Marcus is the man who saved my life last night." Sarah nodded coolly. "We appreciate your intervention. However, Mr. Whitmore, I must advise that bringing an outside consultant into sensitive company matters opens us up to significant liability concerns." "Noted and overruled," Whitmore said. "David, show him what you found." David pulled up a screen on the conference room display. "I've been tracking the dark web chatter for months," he said, his words tumbling out with caffeinated urgency. "Ever since we announced Project Citadel, that's our new encryption protocol, there's been an increase in traffic from various criminal and nation-state actors. But last week, something changed." The screen showed what looked like forum posts, all written in languages Marcus recognized: Russian, Chinese, Arabic. David clicked through them, translated text appearing alongside the originals. "Someone put out a bounty," David continued. $10 million for Alexander Whitmore, delivered alive to a location in Eastern Europe. "The bounty went live 6 days ago," Marcus leaned forward. "Who posted it? That's the thing, we can't trace it. Whoever did this used routing protocols I've never seen before. We're talking nation-state level capabilities, but the motivations seem personal. The bounty specifies alive, which suggests they want information from him, not just him dead." "Project Citadel," Marcus said. "What makes it so valuable?" Whitmore took over. "It's quantum-resistant encryption with a unique property. It's impossible to decrypt without a physical key that can only exist in one place at a time. No government backdoors, no mathematical vulnerabilities, no way to intercept and decode. If we release it, every intelligence agency in the world loses their primary surveillance capabilities. So you've made enemies of the CIA, NSA, FSB, MSS, and probably a dozen other alphabet agencies," Marcus summarized. "Also drug cartels, human traffickers, and anyone else who depends on cracking encrypted communications to catch criminals," Whitmore added. "I'm not naive. I know this technology will help bad actors too. But I believe the right to privacy is fundamental. Governments have gotten too comfortable treating their citizens' digital lives as open books." Sarah Hendricks interjected, her voice sharp. "And I've been advising Alexander for 6 months that this is corporate suicide. We've received threats, legal challenges, attempted hacks, and now actual kidnapping attempts. It's time to shelve Project Citadel before it gets someone killed." "No," Whitmore said flatly. "We're 2 weeks from release. I'm not backing down now." Marcus studied the three of them, Whitmore's determination, Sarah's concern, David's nervous energy. There was tension here, layers of disagreement and fear. "David," Marcus said, "the 4 men from last night, can you identify them?" "Already did." David pulled up 4 photographs, mugshots by the look of them. "Interpol database, all former Spetsnaz, all with ties to organized crime networks in Chechnya. They've worked as mercenaries for the past 5 years, mostly kidnapping and extortion jobs in Europe." "Who hired them?" "Still working on that. The money trail goes through shell corporations in Cyprus, Bermuda, and the Cayman Islands. Classic money laundering patterns." Marcus turned to Carter. "Did any of them talk?" "After the police picked them up, they all lawyered up immediately," Carter said. "Expensive lawyers too, someone's taking care of them." "Then we need to find out who." Marcus began pacing, his mind working through the problem. "If there's a $10 million bounty, those 4 men weren't the only team. There'll be others coming. We need to flip one of the Chechens, get them to give up their contractor." "The police won't let us anywhere near them," Sarah said. "They're in custody, awaiting arraignment. Then we don't go through official channels." Marcus looked at Whitmore. "You said you need someone who isn't part of your existing security apparatus. That means you think someone on your team is compromised." "Who?" Whitmore glanced at Carter, who shook her head. "Everyone's been vetted, background checks, polygraphs, the works." "Someone's feeding information out," Marcus insisted. "Those men knew exactly when and where to find you. Romano's on a Thursday night isn't public information. You don't advertise your schedule. So either they've been surveilling you for weeks, or someone told them where you'd be." A heavy silence descended on the conference room. "I trust everyone in this room," Whitmore said finally. "Beyond that, I trust my executive assistant, Patricia. She's been with me for 12 years. And I trust my personal driver, James. That's it. That's the list." "Then we start with everyone else," Marcus said. "David, I need access to your network logs, every communication in and out of this building for the past month. Carter, I need personnel files on everyone who's had access to Whitmore's schedule." "That's over 200 people," Carter protested. "Then we've got a lot of work to do. We have 71 hours left." The day blurred into a marathon of data analysis. Marcus had forgotten how much modern intelligence work involved staring at computer screens, parsing through endless streams of information looking for the one anomaly that didn't fit. His eyes ached. His back protested sitting for hours. But slowly, patterns began to emerge. David's network logs showed 17 instances of unusual data transfers, large files being moved to external servers using VPN connections that masked their destinations. The transfers all originated from the same subnet, which narrowed the suspects down to employees in the legal department. Sarah Hendricks's department. At 4:30 p.m., Marcus left to pick up Emma from school. He'd promised to be there every day, and he wasn't breaking that promise. He walked her home, helped her with homework, long division, which she mastered with the same determination her mother had shown for everything, and made dinner while she watched cartoons. At 7 p.m., Carter arrived to stay with Emma while Marcus returned to Whitmore Technologies. "Daddy has to work late again," Marcus explained to Emma, kneeling down to her eye level. "But Miss Carter is going to hang out with you, and Mrs. Rodriguez is right next door if you need anything." "Is this about helping the person from last night?" Emma asked, too perceptive for her age. "Yes, baby. It is. Are you being safe?" Marcus hugged her tight. "Always, I promise." Back at the high-rise, Marcus found Whitmore still in the conference room, now surrounded by empty coffee cups and the detritus of a day spent in crisis mode. "We have a problem," Marcus said without preamble. "The data leaks are coming from the legal department. Someone in Sarah Hendricks's team is feeding information to whoever put out the bounty." Whitmore's face went pale. "Sarah's been my friend for 20 years. She was at my wedding. She's godmother to my youngest daughter." "I'm not saying it's her. I'm saying it's someone in her department." Marcus pulled up the evidence on the conference room screen. These 17 transfers, all during business hours, all sent to anonymized servers. The pattern started 3 months ago, right after you announced Project Citadel. "Jesus." Whitmore ran his hands through his hair. "How do we figure out who?" "We set a trap. We feed false information through different channels and see which information makes it to the outside. But we need to move fast. There's another team coming, I guarantee it." They worked through the night, crafting 3 different fake schedules for Whitmore. One showed him visiting the company's Boston office on Saturday. Another had him attending a charity gala in the Hamptons on Sunday. The third placed him at a private estate in Connecticut for a board meeting on Monday. David sent each schedule to a different subset of the legal department, using internal communications that would look legitimate. Then they waited. Marcus caught 2 hours of sleep on a couch in Whitmore's office, his phone alarm set to wake him at 5:30 a.m. so he could get home before Emma woke up. He made it with 15 minutes to spare, slipping into the apartment to find Carter asleep in the armchair, a pistol hidden under a throw pillow. "Anything?" Marcus whispered. "All quiet," Carter replied. "Your daughter talks in her sleep. She was having a dream about elephants and ice cream." Marcus smiled despite his exhaustion. "Sounds like a good dream." He made Emma breakfast, waffles this time with strawberries, and walked her to school. The surveillance team was still in place, now with additional members Marcus recognized as Whitmore's people. If someone came for Emma, they'd have to go through a wall of highly trained professionals. But that knowledge didn't make the fear in Marcus's chest any lighter. At 9:17 a.m., David called. "We got a hit. Someone took the bait on the Connecticut schedule." Dark web chatter shows a new team mobilizing, 6 operators this time arriving from Montreal. They're planning to hit the Connecticut estate on Monday. "So we know who leaked it," Marcus said. "Who had access to that particular fake schedule?" 3 people. Sarah Hendricks herself, a senior associate named Thomas Brennan, and a paralegal named Jennifer Ortiz. Marcus felt the pieces clicking together. Pull up everything on all 3. Background, financials, personal lives. Someone's vulnerability got exploited, gambling debts, affairs, blackmail, find it. By noon, they had their answer. Jennifer Ortiz, 28 years old, single mother of 2, struggling with medical bills from her son's leukemia treatment. 3 months ago, she'd received a mysterious deposit of $50,000 into her checking account. 2 weeks later, the data transfers began. "She's not a traitor," Marcus said, staring at Jennifer's photo. A tired-looking woman with kind eyes and worry lines too deep for someone not yet 30. "She's desperate. She's still feeding information to people trying to kill me," Whitmore said, though his voice carried more sadness than anger. "We can use this." Marcus turned to Carter. "Bring her in, not here, somewhere neutral. Tell her we know what's happening and we want to help. She's probably terrified, probably thinks she's in too deep to get out." Jennifer Ortiz arrived at the coffee shop on 47th Street at 2 p.m., her hands shaking as she sat down across from Marcus and Whitmore in a back booth. Carter stood nearby, watching the door. "I'm sorry," Jennifer said immediately, tears already streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. They said they'd hurt my kids if I didn't help them." My son, he's only 6, he's going through chemo, and they said," her voice broke. "They said they'd make him disappear if I told anyone." Marcus kept his voice gentle. "Who's they, Jennifer?" "I don't know. A man came to my apartment. Russian accent, maybe. He showed me pictures of my son at school, at the hospital, at my mom's place. He knew everything. He gave me instructions, what information to send, how to send it. I couldn't say no." "You're not in trouble," Whitmore said. "Not from us, but we need your help to stop them." "How?" Jennifer wiped her eyes. "They're watching me. If I don't send the next update, then we give them what they want," Marcus said. "But we control the information. You tell them Whitmore is going to the Connecticut estate on Monday, just like they expect. But what they won't expect is for us to be ready." Jennifer looked between them, hope and fear warring in her expression. "You want to ambush them. We want to end this," Marcus corrected. "And to do that, we need to capture someone who can tell us who's really behind the bounty. Those 6 operators from Montreal, they're mercenaries. Someone hired them. We find out who." It took another hour to walk through the plan, to reassure Jennifer that her children would be protected, that Whitmore's resources would cover her son's medical bills, and that she wouldn't face criminal charges. By the time she left the coffee shop, she looked lighter, as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Think she'll hold up?" Carter asked. "She doesn't have a choice," Marcus said. "None of us do." The Connecticut estate was a sprawling property in Fairfield County, 40 acres of woodland surrounding a main house that looked like it had been transplanted from an English manor. Whitmore used it for executive retreats and private meetings, somewhere he could escape the city's chaos. Marcus arrived on Sunday evening, driving up in Whitmore's Mercedes while Carter followed in a separate vehicle. They had 24 hours to prepare before the 6 operators from Montreal made their move. The estate's security was already impressive. Perimeter cameras, motion sensors, a panic room in the basement with reinforced walls. But Marcus wanted more. He walked the grounds with Carter, identifying sight lines and approach vectors, thinking like the attackers would think. "They'll come at night," Marcus said, pointing to the tree line on the eastern edge of the property. "Through there where the cameras have blind spots. 6 operators means 2 teams of 3, 1 team to breach the house, 1 team as backup and extraction." "So we reinforce the cameras," Carter suggested. "No. We let them come." Marcus turned to her. "Think about it. If we show obvious security improvements, they'll know it's a trap. We need them to commit, to get inside, to think they've won. Then we take them." Carter frowned. "That's risky. Puts Mr. Whitmore in direct danger." "Mr. Whitmore won't be here. We'll use a double, someone from your team who matches his build. I'll be in the panic room with eyes on all the feeds. You'll have operators positioned outside, hidden, ready to move when I give the signal. And if something goes wrong," Marcus met her eyes, "then I'm in the house with them and I'll do what I did at Romano's. Whatever it takes." They spent Sunday night running drills, positioning Carter's team in concealed locations around the property, setting up additional cameras and microphones that the approaching team wouldn't detect. David, working remotely from Manhattan, hacked into local traffic cameras to track any vehicles approaching from Montreal. At 11:43 p.m. Sunday, he called. 6 men just crossed into Connecticut. 3 vehicles, all rentals, ETA to the estate in 90 minutes. "Everyone in position," Marcus ordered. "Radio silence from here on out, comms only if absolutely necessary." He descended into the panic room, a reinforced concrete chamber beneath the main house, equipped with monitors showing feeds from every camera on the property. The Whitmore double, a security operator named Mills who donned a wig and prosthetics to match the CEO's appearance, was in the master bedroom on the 2nd floor, reading a book with the lights on. From the outside, it would look like Alexander Whitmore was spending a quiet night alone at his estate. Marcus watched the monitors, his breathing slow and controlled, his mind settling into that cold, focused state he'd thought he'd left behind. This was the part of his old life he'd been good at, the waiting, the anticipation, the moment before violence erupted. At 1:17 a.m. movement. 3 figures appeared on the eastern camera, exactly where Marcus had predicted. They moved like professionals, low and fast, using the tree line for cover. They reached the perimeter fence, cut through it with bolt cutters, and proceeded toward the house. The second team appeared 2 minutes later, taking position near the driveway as backup. Marcus keyed his radio once, a single click, alerting Carter's team that contact was imminent. The 3-man assault team reached the house at 1:24 a.m. They bypassed the front door, too obvious, and instead moved to a side entrance near the kitchen. Marcus watched one of them pick the lock with practiced efficiency. 10 seconds, the door opened. They were inside. Marcus switched to the interior cameras, tracking the three figures as they moved through the first floor. They knew the layout. Jennifer's leaked information had included floor plans. They moved directly toward the stairs, ascending to the second floor. Mills, in the master bedroom, stood up from his reading chair. He'd been briefed on his role: act surprised, don't resist, let them think they've succeeded. The bedroom door burst open. The three operators rushed in, weapons drawn, tasers. Marcus noted, not guns. They wanted Whitmore alive. Mills raised his hands. Don't hurt me. What do you want? One of the operators spoke, his English heavily accented. Mr. Whitmore, you're coming with us. No trouble, you stay alive. They zip-tied Mills's hands, pulled a hood over his head, and began leading him toward the stairs. Marcus waited until they reached the first floor, until they were moving toward the side door where their vehicle waited. Then he activated the lockdown protocol. Steel shutters slammed down over every window and door. Emergency lights flashed on, bathing the house in red, and Carter's team, hidden in the darkness outside, moved into position around the perimeter. You're surrounded, Marcus's voice boomed through the house's intercom system. Drop your weapons and get on the ground. This is your only warning. Chaos erupted. The three operators inside the house scattered, releasing Mills and taking cover behind furniture. The backup team outside began moving toward the house, trying to breach the shuttered doors. Marcus left the panic room, climbing the stairs to the first floor. He'd memorized the positions of all three operators from the camera feeds. 2 in the living room, 1 in the kitchen. He moved like smoke through the darkened house, using the red emergency lights to his advantage. The first operator never saw him coming. Marcus came from behind, applied a rear naked choke, held it for 8 seconds until the man went limp. Not dead, just unconscious. 1 down. The second operator heard something, turned, and Marcus was already there. A quick strike to the throat, followed by a knee to the gut, then a takedown that put the operator face first into the hardwood floor. Marcus zip-tied the man's hands and moved on. The third operator was smarter. He'd found a defensive position in the kitchen with sight lines on the main approaches. Marcus had to admire the tactical thinking even as he planned to exploit its weakness. He triggered the fire suppression system in the kitchen. Water exploded from ceiling sprinklers, flooding the room, destroying the operator's visibility. Marcus moved through the deluge, grabbed the man's weapon hand, twisted the wrist until the taser fell and swept the man's legs. They grappled on the wet floor, the operator fighting with the desperate strength of someone who knew he was outmatched. Marcus ended it with a precise strike to a nerve cluster on the neck. The operator spasmed once, then went still. 3 down. 3 outside. Marcus keyed his radio. Carter, status? 2 in custody, 1 ran into the woods, teams pursuing. Copy that, coming out. Marcus exited through the front door, now unsealed, the lockdown lifted, and found Carter standing over 2 prone figures, both zip-tied and guarded by her team. Mills was there too, the hood removed, looking shaken but unhurt. Nice work, Carter said. Your turn to talk to them. Marcus nodded. He knelt down beside the nearest operator, a man in his 30s with a shaved head and Cyrillic tattoos on his neck. You know how this goes, Marcus said in Russian, his accent flawless. You're looking at kidnapping, attempted murder, federal charges that'll put you away for 20 years. Or you can talk to me. Tell me who hired you. Tell me who's paying the bounty. The operator spat at Marcus's feet. Go to hell. Wrong answer. Marcus stood, turned to Carter. Get them processed. I want everything, phones, wallets, DNA. David will trace their communications. Someone hired them and we're going to find out who. It took David less than 6 hours. By sunrise Monday morning, Marcus was back in Manhattan at Whitmore Technologies, staring at the name on David's screen. You're sure? Marcus asked. 100%, David confirmed. The money trail leads to a holding company owned by Viktor Sokolov. Russian oligarch made his billions in oil and gas, but his real business is information brokerage. He sells intelligence to the highest bidder, corporations, governments, criminal syndicates. Why does he want Whitmore? It's not about the ransom, David said. Sokolov has contracts with 3 different national intelligence agencies who have promised him billions if he can get Project Citadel shut down before release. He captures Whitmore,